Welcome everyone to the Ordinary Council meeting of Wyndham City Council this Tuesday the 4th of July 2017. In the spirit of reconciliation, before we begin this meeting, I acknowledge the peoples of the Kulin Nation as the traditional owners of the land on which Wyndham is being built. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. Please stand for the opening prayer. We pray for guidance in the Council's decision making to achieve the best outcome for the people of Wyndham. Thank you. I would like to welcome members of the gallery, press, councillors and staff here tonight for the Ordinary Council meeting. Some of you may have seen the notices in the foyer, but for those of you who didn't, I would like to make you aware of the following. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the internet. The recording will be archived and made available on Council's website. Whilst all care has been taken to ensure that your privacy is maintained, please be aware that your presence may be recorded. Apologies and requests for leave, Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There are none this evening. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr Mayor. Sorry, we do actually have Councillor John Gibbons as an apology this evening.
Yes, sorry, okay. Not a problem. Thank you for that.
I moved apology.
Oh, you moved the apology. Thank you, Councillor Khan. A seconder? Councillor Gilligan. Any discussion, councillors? If there isn't any, I shall put that. All those in favour? Against, it's carried. Councillors, is there any councillors, declaration by councillors of disclosure of conflict or of interest or conflicting personal interest in any item on the agenda? Councillor McAlane.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Item 6.3.1, Integrated Water Management Plan Adoption. And my conflict is I'm a Director of City Westwater. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any others, Councillor? Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a conflict on item number 6.4.1, which is Planning Scheme Amendment C198, Rezoning of the Land Act 303-319, Princess Highway Werribee. I do have in the area the block of land, so I would like to declare.
Thank you for that, Councillor Khan. Are there any more councillors? Okay. We'll go on to item 4, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have a mover for that? Councillor Maynard, seconder, Councillor Khan. Councillors, is there any discussion on the minutes of the Ordinary Council meeting of the 27th of June? If there isn't any, I shall put that motion. All those in favour? Against, it's carried. Madam CEO, any deputations and presentations?
Not this evening, Mr Mayor.
Thank you for that. Councillors, we'll go on to officers' reports. Item 6.1, are there any petitions?
No petitions this evening, Mr.
No
Mayor.
petitions, thank you. Any strategic reports, Madam CEO?
Not this evening, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillors, we're on to item 6.3. 6.3.1, Integrated Water Management Plan Adoption. Thank you, Councillor McAlane. If you could leave the chamber, thank you. Great. Okay, thank you. Councillors, could I have a mover for this motion? Councillor Marcus, thank you. A seconder? Councillor Hooper. Councillors, do we have any discussion on this item? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a very, very important water management plan, and there is 201 pages if anyone would like to read it. It's very comprehensive, but it needs to be very comprehensive because water is our life, and if we don't look after what we've got and everything else that goes with the water, we will kill our planet. It is very, very well laid out in this policy here. So as it belongs in my portfolio, I think that it's been done well, and I do hope that everybody, and it's been out for consultation and it's been embraced by the portfolio holders, members of our committee, and they're very happy with what they have read in this policy. It is important that we are 2 degrees hotter than other suburbs in Melbourne. We are drier. We have just had the driest June on record, so I think we will be in for some really hard times again with our water. And we have, because we're growing so much bigger, we will have more stress on our water. So it is important that we save water wherever we can. It is important that we look after our Werribee River. It's important that we look after the irrigation farmers, but also everybody needs water. And so I'm very happy, and I do hope everybody will go through and read that water plan, because it's well worth reading, because if we don't look after our water supply now, as I said, we can't exist. And I just love what the kids did on some real estate boards of water is our life. Water is in our hands, and what those kids portrayed, I think, was absolutely fantastic, because if we can get the young people of this city worried about our water, I think we'll go a long way to being able to make sure that we do that. We've also got some other key locations, flooding in issues in Boland Road, drainage system upgrades in Werribee South, litter dumping, which again I think I spoke on 2 weeks ago, the concerns of what we're doing with our litter, getting into our rivers. Our Werribee River is quite sick, and because it's got the algae growing in it, that is a clear indication that the river water is not going as well. So we've got a lot of things that we have to do. Degrading of the vegetation in Wesley Gardens. So there's a lot of work to do, but we're very confident that the Environment Committee will be working very closely with everybody in the next 4 years to make sure that we make a difference for our water supply for all of our residents here in Wyndham. So thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Any other discussion, councillors? Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I'd just like to take this opportunity. The report touches on the condition of our waterways and the need to rectify and protect them, and acknowledge the work of our volunteers in the community, such as the Point Cook Open Spaces Group, which spend many countless hours ensuring that our waterways are refreshened and protected, and try to encourage wildlife to come back into those spaces, which is, from the environmental perspective, which Councillor Marcus has just touched on, it's quite important to recognise, and it's good to see that in this document it does touch on those pieces. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Great. Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Any other discussion, councillors? If not, we shall put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. If we could have Councillor McAloney back in the chamber, please. Okay. Councillors, the next item is 6.3.2, Social Procurement Policy, Notice of Motion 568.
Mr Mayor.
Yes, so Councillor Villa-Gonzalez.
Yes, I would like to move that Council 1 note the inclusion of the proposed sections 1.4 and 6.4 as described in the report for consideration as part of the review of the Council's procurement policy, and number 2, receive the revised procurement policy incorporating changes in response to Notice of Motion 568 at the August Ordinary Council meeting. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great. So that's the proposal. Thank you. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Khan. Councillors, any discussion on this item? Councillor Villa-Gonzalez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to thank officers for bringing this report back to Council as requested in our Notice of Motion. Mr. Mayor, I don't intend to speak for too long. You all know how passionate I am about social procurement, because as the report states, it provides us with the ability to procure goods and services from social and local enterprises to strengthen social equity, community cohesion, well-being, and promote local jobs. In some ways, this is about us taking our destiny into our own hands rather than lying down and accepting that our economic circumstances cannot improve. Mr. Mayor, the last few months since my colleagues supported the notice of motion have been very valuable for me to understand in more detail the full range of views of my councillor colleagues. This is why I'm glad to see the officer's report acknowledge that social procurement decisions cannot be taken in isolation. That is, I acknowledge and support the views of some of my colleagues that these decisions also need to be balanced by council's obligation to make economically sustainable decisions while considering best value principles and the rate capping environment we now work under. While we are not in the business of making profits for the sake of profits, council is also not a charity. After all, we are handling ratepayers' funds to deliver goods and services our community expects. But back to the policy changes, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate the changes to our procurement policy at sections 1.4 and 6.4 that have been put forward for consideration in reviewing the policy, because they can provide us with some high-level guidance about next steps. I also note that officers are recommending that rather than coming back to councillors only once in December with a final procurement policy, including social procurement, they are also now proposing to also come back to us 3 times, including in August, November, and December. This provides councillors with further opportunities to discuss these matters and receive further advice. Mr. Mayor, I will close by noting that I understand any approach by us to social procurement needs to be cautious, smart, and transparent. As someone who has been involved in this space for decades, I also appreciate that we are going to talk more about promoting local jobs and promoting local content in some of our tenders. Our documentation has to be open and fair for all to see, including potential providers of goods and services. There are some good examples of how other individuals and groupings of councils have come together to start this journey, and I recommend that officers take a look at the lessons learned when framing their advice back to us over the coming months. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Villa-Gonzalo. Very good. Councillors, any other discussion? Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I echo the voice of the Councillor Menegazes and obviously, so Walter, apologize, and of course his work he have done in this space that is passionate about social procurement. I'd just like to say that now this got economic and employment consideration. Obviously, the social procurement has the potential to engage and disadvantaged group and generates the employment opportunities on the local level, which helps the council addressing the local issues. The greater utilization of the social and local enterprises will assist in increasing the financial investment, job creation and retention, and overall economy activity that will assist in improving the Wyndham's prosperity. I think it's good policy to adopt and give an opportunity to local suppliers who engage and to meet the council's the overall vision, what we're looking for, and the council will benefit, the community will benefit. I think it's a great work Walter have done among his directors and his team. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Any other discussion, Councillor? Councillor Gilligan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to say well done to Councillor Villa-Gonzalo on his significant investment in this space. I will express some disappointment of the decision to slightly water down this motion. It's very clear that this is referring to noting this contribution as opposed to endorsing it. I certainly make it very clear that my position is very much the endorsement of the social procurement policy and the significant work that has been underway. I think the importance of discussing more in the context of this particular policy is very much around what we can do in this space. The importance particularly around jobs, looking at being more ambitious around whether or not we put a mandatory minimum target, amount, how many young people we hire here in Wyndham City Council. Really ambitious areas that can certainly come through in a further examination of a procurement policy over a transition and transformation period over a 4-year term, which is certainly what's being discussed, although that particular policy idea, not so much, but something that can come up through a huge advancement in this space. I think it would be important to consider an annual reporting methodology, being able to report back to Council around how we are actually making advancements in this space. It keeps us accountable, it keeps the administrative arm of Council accountable, and it gives information to the public and to business and to community that we are making significant inroads in this space. And I think this also sends a strong message, if we continue to invest in this space, around what we can encourage the state and federal governments to do, especially given the nature of investment that's coming into our municipality, how we can drive the channel on this, how we can say we want to see more investment through local supply chains into local businesses and encourage them to do the same thing, or even looking at it from a jobs perspective and saying, well, if you're going to invest $1.2 billion in roads, how many of those jobs can be local? How many of those people can be Wyndham community residents that take on those jobs and invest more into our local economy? So this is what this policy essentially tries to achieve. And once again, I think this is a significant step forward and a great, as I said at the initial phase of the notice of motion, a game changer for our municipality if we get it right.
Thank you. Any other discussion, councillors? Councillor Marcus.
Thank you very much. I appreciate what Councillor Gilligan has just said, because this is something that the city has needed for a long, long time. And I think if you go to page 18, 1.4, social procurement, there's quite a few dot points in that, and can we really work on those? I think this policy still needs a lot of work done on it, and it will be coming back for us to debate even further. For the simple reason is, here's another point, earning and learning, partnering with local businesses. The local businesses have been crying out for years to be partnering with this council. And if we don't partner with our own local businesses, we won't have the employment in this city. So I really think that if we can come back, there's quite a few points here that we need to clarify, to work on, to make sure that it's just not another piece of paper. I really will be happy with that, because jobs are declining, the hairdressers are putting off people, everybody's being put off, people can't, and we're getting to a very serious position. So what we've got in this city, we must learn to work with them to make sure that we keep our jobs in this city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Any other discussion, councillors? Councillor Hooper.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we all know that we've got issues with employment in this city. The Brotherhood of St Lawrence last year released that report that I discussed beforehand with the 17% youth unemployment in the western suburbs. But like, I just want to exercise caution when heading forward with this particular program. As the officer's report mentions, I'll read it out. As adopting a social procurement policy needs to be finely balanced when considering its usage as part of the procurement process of an organisation. Should it be implemented incorrectly or without due consideration, it has the potential to create skewed results when procuring goods and services for the organisation. One outcome of this could be the potential increase in costs of goods and services and or an increase in time cost in procuring goods and services. So it's actually important to note that in the document, but also going forward, it's pleasing to hear from Councillor Villan-Gonzalo about the steps that we are taking as a council to adopt this policy, or if we're going to adopt this policy, in a considered and meaningful way. So it's actually comforting to know that those issues are being addressed, and I look forward to seeing how it evolves over time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Hooper. Councillors, any other discussion? Councillor McElwain.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to also commend Councillor Walter Villan-Gonzalez, and I'll just add further that it is a balance between council's obligations to make economically viable decisions while continuing and considering best value principles and our rate capping regime. So it is a big balance between a number of factors, and I'm sure we will do it well. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any other discussion? Councillor Villan-Gonzalo, do you want the right to reply? No? Message has been sent. Thank you. Okay, councillors, I shall put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Councillors, the next item goes to Strategic and Town Planning, 6.4.1, Planning Scheme Amendment C198, rezoning of land at 303-319 Princess Highway, Werribee. And I'll just wait on Councillor Khan to leave the room before we carry on. Great. Now, councillors, as I say, 6.4.1. Councillor Shaw.
Mr Mayor, I move the council defer this item to enable councillors more time to consider the matter.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Gilligan. Councillor Shaw, do you wish to discuss this item?
No, I don't.
No, you don't? Okay. Councillors, if there's no further discussion, I shall put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Thank you. If we could get Councillor Khan back in, please. Councillors, the next item is 6.5, other reports. So we have 6.5.1, the draft Wyndham Domestic Animal Management Plan 2017 to 2021, with a recommendation on page 37. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shaw. Seconder? Councillor Khan. Councillors, is there any discussion? Councillor Shaw? No discussion? Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can I say this is a great piece of work, which is we're now proposing to people to see that council officers have done good work. His report is very thoroughly presenting the public, saying that, you know, we have some reduced the numbers. We used to have 1,300 dogs in 2012 and 13, and ours is going to have reduced, and this is what I'm talking about, that the study had been reduced because that used to be in a pound, now it's 918 dogs. It's good to see the reports outline that council have done a lot of training to make sure the staff is all trained, and there's a lot of work has been scheduled. It's reports outline, but also the reports as well, attendance talks about the number of the dogs we have in the city. So it's great to see that we got 19,366 dogs, and we got number of registered cats, which is 6,050 cats. Now, we would like to see that, you know, here's number of average dogs impounded annually is 978 dogs, and the city offers great services. Obviously, though, due to the running council's great program about that putting a microchip, it reduces a lot of, you know, the problems which is honors my face. The draft it also talks about the domestic animal management plan, which is now it's going to be 17 to till 21. It's increased the value proportion of the pet registration, addressing the unwanted cats and dog attacks and cat nuisance in the rural areas, delivering an efficient and effective animal control services. Now, I'm looking forward to see that, you know, it's been now out for the public to make a comment starting from today onwards, and the community consultation has been done very nicely. They will be on website, social media, the media release will be done so people can actually have their say. And this is, I'd like to also say that a domestic animal management, which is the Animal Act 1994, is a now requirement. We need to submit that each year. So this now we're now meeting the requirement, and it's a great piece of work. We'd love to see that now the report will come out, and what the owners would like to see that, you know, how they have their experience regarding the council services. But I'd like to also say that, you know, councils spend a lot of time and effort, and in the past you can see the picture on 43 page of 82. We have done quite a friendly exhibitions, and we invited residents to bring their dogs and cats and, you know, get a microchip. So it's proud to see the city have spending a lot of you know, the time and effort to doing awareness about that their ownership, so that way they can avoidance of any fines the mayor could if they don't have the knowledge. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Khan. Any other discussion, councillors? If not, I'll put them. Oh, sorry, Councillor Marcus.
Thank you. I'd like to make it clear that this is a review of the existing plan that we did 4 years ago. And not a lot is unchanged. And I think over that 4 years, I think I might have voted against it 4 years ago because there was the issues of the cats that I, felt was a concern. But I think over the last 4 years, we have worked very, very hard on reviewing absolutely everything. And we are certainly winning the war with the dogs, but sadly not so much with the cats. I think I'd like to celebrate the work that our girls down in the pound are doing at the moment, and also Craig Murray. I think they're doing an absolutely fantastic job. And it's wonderful to go down there and see these darling cats wishing for a new home. But these are the things that the statistics of the dogs are, we're getting very few dogs now that are being caught in the streets, and most of them now are registered, which is very fantastic. But sadly, with the number of our cats, there is only 6,050 cats registered, and I'm sure there's probably 50,000 cats running around in the street. In the main street of Werribee, there were 47 that we had to trap, and they were all diseased. What I want to get across to the people is the cats, because I took 3 in, 2 I did not have examined, and I've now lived with these cats for 8 years with feline AIDS. Now, this spreads very, very quickly, and people that need animals, like the elderly, they let their pets outside. A tom comes along, attacks that cat, and they go straight down with feline AIDS. And so the disease spreads and spreads. So what we've got to do, we've really got to address this issue we have in this city of the unowned cats. And I always say to people, feed them but trap them, because we've just got to get this. And the members of my portfolio laugh at me because I want in the next 4 years that we perhaps have nearly every cat registered to an owner. So that, that'll be something good. The other one is the dog attacks in little areas like Little River, where there is animals, and if the dogs get out, if they attack a sheep and they get blood, well, from there on in you may as well get rid of your dog, because the dog will always go out and attack, and it mightn't always be the sheep, it could be people. So these are some of the things that we will be working on over the next year, but there will be a lot of advertising and education, because if we don't get to educate the people that, there is a lot of hotspots in Werribee that, people are ringing us up telling us that they've got 10 cats running around. And we are putting out a postcard to engage key stakeholders. I think, and it's all listed here of how we're going to do it, but I think we have to do more. I think we have to go to Win News. I think we have to do a lot more getting out to the residents. It's all right to send it to the vets and the dog walkers, but we've got to get out there to tell people, to tell us where these hotspots are with the cats. We've just had one recently, her next door neighbour, she's got 10 cats and they're all in her house. We've been to other places, and that's what I mean. Elaine is just absolutely fantastic. That once we know that where these hotspots are, the council go in and they trap, and and then we take the cats back, and if they're suitable, they try to find them a home. So I really think that we should be celebrating the work of our council staff, because they're doing a fantastic job, and sadly I don't want to see the cats running around in these cold nights out there, fighting each other and that type of thing. So well done to council officers. Please tell them I'm very pleased, and I look forward to working with them all to see if we can achieve my goal. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Marcus. Any other discussion, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? It's carried. The next item is item 6.5.2, Laurie Emmons Motocross Track Management, with a recommendation on page 65. Councillors Canova mover, Councillor Maynard a seconder, Councillor Hooper. Councillors, any discussion? Councillor Maynard.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, in supporting this motion, it certainly warms my heart to see this come to the chamber. It has been a long journey by a number of people over a number of years, and a lot of hard work by councillors and council officers with a vision to see the creation of a new motocross track at Laurie Emmons Reserve. Whilst never having ridden a bike or even know how to start one, I found myself involved in the sport a number of years ago as a result of an accident with one of my sons, who was riding a bike in an unsuitable area. I ended up becoming involved in that club, becoming the president, and the club operated for a number of years at this track. There were a number of passionate and committed people who ensured that this club and track functioned successfully. We also had quite a fair bit of involvement and assistance from members of VicPol, who themselves were dirt bike riders and took a keen interest in what transpired at the track, as well as actively encouraging riders to participate in this sport in a safe and controlled environment. Council also has a responsibility to discourage riding of motocross bikes on reserves and areas not suited to such sports. That is why this council, along with Hobsons Bay City Council, has contributed to the supply of 2 motocross bikes and gear supplied to VicPol so they can discourage illegal riding and damage to our local environment. Now, hopefully, the word will get around to all riders that very soon the Laurie Emmons motocross track will reopen and ensure the protection of riders by being able to ride on a properly constructed track approved by Motorcycling Victoria. Whilst motocross is not everyone's cup of tea, there is a large number of people in and around this municipality that ride dirt bikes, and it's up to this council to ensure, with the provision of such a track, that they do so in a safe manner. Another side to this, Mr Mayor, is the financial implications to the community, as there are a number of local businesses in this municipality that sell and service these bikes, as well as the required safety gear. In doing so, riders will also help preserve local jobs and contribute to the local economy. Mr Mayor, I'm particularly glad to see that 2 points of the recommendation allow for in the establishment of a community reference group to work with council during the reopening of the track and during the first 24 months of operation. And that group will consist of up to 3 community representatives and a local VicPol officer. I do hope that the motocross community come together and embrace this new track and help ensure its long-term survival by helping where possible and passing on a great deal of experience obtained over the years as well as giving their assistance to new and potential riders. I know the council has a large database of people who have indicated their interest in using such a track when it is completed, and yes, it has been a very lengthy process, but it is what it is, and council has to ensure that any facility that it builds or is involved in building must meet and comply with all relevant safety requirements. Mr Mayor, I think it's important to note that this particular track has been in existence in some shape or form for almost 45 years, as it has been in existence since the early to mid-70s. And I believe, Mr Mayor, that has produced a number of champion motocross riders, and may have even produced a number of Australian champions. We can now put to rest another jewel in the sporting crown of this city with the construction and eventual completion of this track in 2018. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Any other discussion, councillors? Councillor McElhaney.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to refer to Mr Maynard, Councillor Maynard's comments about the track being there for over 45 years. I could actually say that I was one of the first aiders that sat on that track when the bikes went past as a 16-year-old as a volunteer capacity with St John Ambulance. So that's how long those tracks have been there.
How long ago?
Oh, we used to pick the young bike riders off the track and send them off to hospital quite frequently. It's disappointing that Motorcycling Victoria have withdrawn support to operate and manage the track, particularly as we put several $100,000 into it. However, I do acknowledge that they were prudent enough to acknowledge the financial sustainability to operate. The park was no longer assured. So I look forward to other expressions of interest by third parties to operate the track in the future.
Thank you, Councillor McElhaney. I too must say that when I was an 11-year-old in England. I too was in the St John's Ambulance Brigade and carried riders off the track, holding up 1/4 of a stretcher. And let me tell you, for an 11-year-old, that wasn't an easy task. But any other discussion, councillors? Councillor Hooper?
Look, this is very much a close to my heart issue. I remember in country Victoria growing up on the back of the Pee-wee 50, which would eventually evolve to a Z250B, used as a dirt bike, although that was a road bike, and came off in more than enough places to know that we need to provide a safe and welcoming environment for our community. So rejuvenating this space is, look, it's actually quite good as a community to have a safe environment, to be able to trust where our kids, loved ones, friends, family can actually explore, motocross, come a cropper if they're going to come a cropper, but in a safe and controlled environment. I think that's an absolute boon for our community, and it's a pleasure to see it up. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Any other discussion, councillors? Councillor Khan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I'd like to say that it's quite disappointing. We have worked so hard along with the sports portfolio holder, Councillor Peter Menard, who started that sort of work on that project on 26th of August 2013, where we did say that, support and options to rebuild and operate under the lease options, work with a number of the government departments. And then the next year, which is after the August 2013, 14 March, we have actually adopted in the last term, Mr. Mayor, that we're going to provide input and design phase of the redevelopment, seek a financial and in-kind contribution to the capital cost of the redevelopment of the facility for this work happen. And I'd like to say that, Peter Menard and his colleague, working on that project, including the portfolio holder, the staff, they work really hard. In 2015, so there's a sequence coming, see how long the council's working really hard to make this place, Laurie Evans, to be a good, so we can use. I have a lot of attachment to this space, this area, the place where I pass every day, go to city. I like to see that, this get rebuilt. Yeah, we do like to see that, MOU was signed in committing them to operate, manage and track once constructed in February 2017. MV, which is more Victoria, advised that supported by the auditor's report, they were no longer in a position at this point in time to proceed with this project, as they can no longer assurance that they have the capacity financial to operate the track. It's a bit disappointing seeing that they have pulled out their options, and we worked really hard. The council, Peter, I worked hard with them. Now, as such, an analysis of the alternative management options has been now constructed to determine whether the most suitable management options and proceed and proposed timeline for the construction operate management. So this report is very thoroughly written. It's now on the page number 69, talks about we're going to start the work, meeting and operating EOIs will start August 17, to go September, then go to October and November. We're hoping, which is, once that finish, that the EOI process, we will get some people, those who are interested and work with us. But it's disappointing to see that, more of it, MV have sort of, pulled out their support. And this is really great work. A lot of people, the locals have played, utilised. And as a Councillor McLoney has said that, she have been the first one to actually, or one of those ones who utilised this, the facilities. It's good to see that now. But I think we've got a faith. We're going to see some more innovative entrepreneurs who come along with us, and council happy to be options and explore and do a good partnership with someone who want to utilise the Laurie Emmons track management. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Any other discussion, councillors? If not, we'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Next item is 6.5.3, bill payment services, contract with Australia Post Corporation, with a recommendation on page 71. Councillors, do I have a mover? Councillor McElhaney. Second to councillors, Councillor Maynard. Discussion, councillors? No discussion? I'll put the motion up. I'll take that back. Councillor Khan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I think it's one of those services being regularly council have utilised. It's just another report and sort of utilising the services Australia Post. So it's straightforward. We're sort of pleased to see that, you know, we sort of putting forward that one, yeah, the contract, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. 6.5.4, Assembly of Councillors, with a recommendation on page 73. Do we have a mover? Councillor Hooper. A seconder? Councillor McElhaney, I think it was. Might have just beat Councillor Maynard to the punch. Councillors, any discussion? If there's no discussion, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Madam CEO, any notices of motion?
No, Mr Mayor, there are none this evening.
Nothing under council seal?
No, Mr Mayor.
Is there any contract summaries?
Not this evening, Mr Mayor.
Fourth time lucky. Any questions with notice from the public gallery?
Indeed, Mr Mayor, we do have a number of questions. So I will read these out. One actually relates to an item, and this is from Mr Bill Strong, who's in the gallery this evening. So I note that the question actually relates to an item that was deferred from council agenda this evening. So my suggestion is I'm happy to read the question out, but certainly we'll take it on notice, Mr Strong, and provide a detailed response to you. The question relates to item on the agenda 6.4.1, rezoning land at 303 319 Princes Highway, Werribee. Will the current zoning of the square block of land at the rear of 301 and 303 Princes Highway Hoppers Crossing be affected by this planning scheme amendment? The block contains the heritage listed South Base Stone. Is this, if this amendment is approved, will the new zoning pose any threat to the future preservation of the heritage site of state significance? So, Mr Mayor, I will take that on notice and we will provide a detailed response to you. And certainly, Mr Mayor, this is likely to come up again as a matter for future council consideration. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I also have this evening a question from Mazem Sayed. Is he in the gallery this evening? Thank you. So I have two questions. The first one relates to the provision of educational needs. What is the local council's future plan to meet the increasing educational needs of the local community? I've been told by many parents that it's very hard for their kids to secure a position in a primary or secondary school as the seats are limited, and it makes things difficult for such parents to send their kids to schools that are far from their homes. So, Mr Mayor, I will refer that through to our Director City Life, Jenny McMahon.
Thank you, Madam CEO, and through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for that question. So probably the first thing to say is it's not a local government's responsibility to be delivering educational services such as schools. So it is a responsibility of the state government. But in having said that, we do a lot of service planning, and we certainly look at the current status, the current number of families, children needing schooling, and we look at our future projections. We're constantly in conversations with the Department of Education to see about their school planning and to make sure our data's right so we can get more schools into the city when families need them. So it's a piece of ongoing work, and we continue to do that work and continue to have those discussions.
Thank you. And one final question again from Muzam Sayed, and this relates to the Indian Cultural Precinct. When will Wyndham City Council be delivering or planning to start the Indian Cultural Precinct, please? And again, Mr Mayor, I'll refer that through to our Director City Life.
Thank you, Madam CEO, and through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you again for that question. To say when we may be starting it is a bit uncertain because we don't know what it is yet. So you may be aware that we're currently out consulting with the community to find out exactly what it is that the community would like to see in this cultural precinct. So it could be a little while off yet, but we're starting to get lots of feedback from the community about the sorts of things that they'd like to see. So what I could encourage you to do is on our website, we're constantly updating that with the latest information about where we're up to with the precinct development. So I would encourage you to keep linking into the website to get information.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. That concludes question time for this evening.
Thank you. Councillors, we go on to councillor delegates reports. We've got 11.1 councillor delegates reports with them starting on page 79. Can I have a mover, please? So Councillor Maynard. A seconder? Councillor Arm. And councillors, any discussion? If there's no discussion, councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? It's carried. Are there any matters of urgent business, Madam CEO?
Not this evening, Mr Mayor.
Do we have any confidential business?
Not this evening, Mr Mayor.
Well, councillors, I declare the meeting closed at 7:45 p.m. Thank you.